Yo, it's Kim, and I normally don't make news type videos, but when rumors about Panasonic's new full frame cameras came out, I couldn't help myself. So in this week's edition, we have news from Panasonic and Olympus, starting off with Olympus and their new high-end camera, which we think is going to replace the EM1 Mark II. It's gonna be very expensive, and it's gonna outshine other cameras. Ooh, very specific there. But with the release of the Fuji X-T3 for only $1,500 and Sony's A7 III at only $2,000, I say Olympus better bring the goods if they're planning on selling it for more than those cameras. Now on to speculation. Some of the things that Olympus could be working on is higher burst speeds. I'm thinking faster than the G9's 20 FPS continuous AF and 60 FPS with how Valentine's Day makes many people feel. Single AF. For me and many other Micro Four Thirds fans, I hope Olympus has an ace up its sleeve, because if a manufacturer makes a good camera, typically those specs filter down to the rest of the lineup. Now moving on to the main story, which is funnily enough not about Micro Four Thirds but about full frame, specifically Panasonic full frame. Man, it's weird saying that. Panasonic's S1 and S1R are rumored to be able to shoot video RAW via external recorder. Now the source is somewhat dodgy, but here it is. I went and spoke with one of the Panasonic reps at their booth, where I asked the rep about the rumor of being able to shoot RAW video. The older gentleman replied, "I can neither confirm nor deny it will be able to shoot RAW." And then he subtly yet meaningfully winked at me in a rather guaranteeing fashion. Okay, creepy. But if it were true, is this something you should look forward to, and is it going to improve your video quality? Well, yes and no. If you're a seasoned pro and you've been doing this for a long time, well then maybe. But if you're just starting out, or even if you're just okay at color grading, then maybe no. When you're shooting RAW, your camera is essentially capturing the best image that it can without really throwing any information away. But when you're shooting JPEG, your camera is basically taking a summary of the information from the RAW file and compressing that down into a smaller file. This is kind of like copying off your friend's notes rather than your teacher's notes. It might not all be there, but you kind of get the main point. Now to give you an example of this, watch what happens to these pictures when I push the exposure. So here's a picture that's clearly underexposed, but here it is exposed from my face. Notice how in one of them my skin looks a lot redder, and in one of them it's still more natural if a touch too green. But here's the same image with the white balance a little warmer. Watch how my face in one of them stays red, while in the other one it actually changes color according to the temperature of the white balance. Now obviously the one where my face was turning red was the JPEG, and the other picture that retained all that detail was the RAW file. And that's because RAW just has a lot more information than JPEG, and you have a lot more latitude to edit it in post. And yes, that's it. Basically when you shoot H.264, AVC HD, MAV, it doesn't matter if it's compressed, it's just like shooting a JPEG. Yes, you can still edit it in post, but you won't have as much latitude as shooting it in RAW. So if you can take advantage of all that information and like to do crazy color grades, then great, RAW is for you. But for many people, myself included, colors straight out of the camera are good enough with minor tweaks. Not to mention the fact that RAW files are massive, and you're gonna need a beefy computer and a lot of hard drives to manage all that data. So as you can probably tell, I'm not really all that psyched about video RAW capability on the S1 and the S1R, just because I know I'll probably never use it, but no, it's not useless, and yes, there's a market for this. And if the video quality is good, you can already hear cinema cameras dying its very slow death. Basically the S1 and the S1R are trying to be low-cost alternatives to cinema cameras, and it'll be really interesting to see who wins that market between Panasonic and Blackmagic. Now for the everyday shooter like me, I wouldn't even bother, at least not for the RAW capabilities. It looks great on a spec sheet, but the time it takes to grade that image to justify using RAW, and all the processing power you'll need, and all the hard drives you'll need, and all the rendering times is enough to scare me away. But hey, for hardcore enthusiasts and seasoned pros, this is a big deal, and if there's anything we'd take out of this, it's that these camera companies haven't stopped innovating, and ultimately that means we, the consumers, are the biggest winners, and our pockets are the biggest losers.